after 12 years, they were like, yes, the CSGO major is the way. And here's the
so
funny
bad,
thing.
isn't it?
They don't even do that for their CSGO competitor game, Valorant, but they do
Joke
it
is
for
the
League of Legends.
Valorant has the better playoff format than CSGO. That's how dumb these guys are. It's so mad, isn't it? It's so mad.
They literally fixed CSGO's format and then stole CSGO's format and then put it in League of Legends.
Right, this is going to be one of those like semi-off season into the start of the season type episodes of Summoning Insight, a one-off with me and Monty. You'll see this year there's going to be a lot more two-man shows, not least because, well, you'll find out how, but essentially we'll be watching a lot more games. You'll find out more about that as time goes. So what we thought we'd do is, let's just get something out now, because today they announced all that like crazy stuff about the format. I know in the off season they hinted like LEC will be the, you know, they would like have the 3 splits and it's like a tournament format now. But these things they dropped today.
Go on. You're saying that Riot decided that they should have 3 tournaments of a domestic league in a year, but previously they said they should have 2 round robin leagues, not 3 tournaments. But we had 3 tournaments in Korea that they then destroyed in order to create a round robin league. Interesting. I wonder what would have happened if they just never did that and just left it alone in the first place.
We'll never know now. Even better, what if you had the 3 tournament format, but with like the greatest viewership ever? That'd be cool. Can't ever run that control experiment. We have to wait till the viewership's degraded. And then if anyone knows how the best of 2s worked in Europe, what they'll do is if this fails, they'll blame it on the actual format. They won't even claim it was like their own fault setting it up. So yeah, basically, if you don't know, here's the best analogy ever. Riot Games is a really stupid person who reads a really good book and goes, doesn't even make sense, just a bunch of big words trying to seem smart. Sweat, pepper, sweat, like that's you, Riot Games. So anyway, the point is they've now announced what I actually think is the real bombshell of the last 3 months, mate. Dude, the announcement today is enormous. Like this is like MSI format is changing, Worlds format is changing. Like this is crazy stuff. So there's loads we can get into here. Oh, by the way, as an aside, because people love all this bullshit. You know I hate it, Monty. I can't stand law in games. Like not obviously the awesome French person who came on the show for the law of the game of like, oh, this is extortion or whatever. Like I don't care about any of that shit. I don't care where Caitlin comes from or what any of the names of the spells are. I just care about the game and the tools, right? So since everyone else does love it though, Monty, they always get super hyped for the cinematics or for all the things. Dude, this cinematic today, I fucking nailed it. Because if people don't know, the actual title of this cinematic was called what? Like The Brink of Infinity or something it was called, right? And I just put as my reply to the tweet, like, this should just be The Brink of Banality. It is so fucking, like, no joke. It actually looks like a student who's learning one of those programs, like 3D Max or like a 3D environment. It looks like their homework was like to do something about League of Legends and turn it in today. And they were like, oh shit, I was up all weekend. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, it's like, there's nothing to it. And by the way, here's the maddest part of all, Monty. The only part of it that references esports is the voices, right? Whose voice is the first voice you hear? They've got the fucking Dora Z1v1, the same clip they said. Dora does not have the gravitas. They said gravity, but they meant gravitas. They said Dora doesn't have the gravitas to carry big moments. He's still the biggest moment in the history of your game, you morons, to the extent that 9 years later, 10 years later, you're acknowledging it as your first iconic moment. And here's the reason, by the way. I'm going to use that as my springboard, though. Here's why this piece sucks, because you're going to think, but wait, Thorin, you don't care about the lore and like the cinematics. Yeah, but they didn't even do it well. Here's how you could have done the exact concept they did, Monty, and it'd be great. You know the premise they had where it was sort of like, it was like the map was abandoned, there was nobody there, and you were hearing echoes. Two things you do. One, UFC did this years ago as an intro, it was amazing. You do sort of like a ghostly figure appearing, doing a move, like you do like a Baron Steel or something. And then here's the other one. This is so obvious to me, I can't believe they missed it, Monty. If you do in the setting that it's like an abandoned area with no one there, it's all the memories of the past. How about when you have like the faker 1v1 movement? How about have like 2 dead Zeds on the floor? You know what I mean? Like something like that. Like do something where there's like little Easter eggs that are tying into it and you're like, oh shit, that would be cool. This instead did just feel like you just turned something in last second and didn't have much going for it.
Especially because I think the idea of it being like a new year and a blank slate that's built on the memories of the past is a cool concept, right?
Could
like
be a great theme,
you're embedding the history in there. So like having the ghosts or something like that would be a lot more fun than what they did. And at a certain point, I'm just like, why even release this video? Like,
I don't know. I know.
Where's
the quality control?
Just don't, you could make that choice just to not release it. I don't know. Whatever. We should talk about the MSI and Worlds formats,
Let's
though.
do it.
So before people start going, Monty and Thorin just hate Riot. Well, this is a lot better. So let's put it out there up front. It is an improvement, especially MSI. I think the format is quite good.
It's
Now,
literally, if people don't know, I actually did a video 4 years ago asking for, and the reasons why, because here's what's weird. Obviously, in a minute, we're going to bitch that they didn't do double limb for Worlds. But the reason why I actually suggested they do it for MSI was for 2 reasons. One, the current format sucks. You only get the semi-finals is basically the only matches anyone cares about. And if you get the wrong one, like EG plays out, it doesn't matter. That one, that's just a free game taken off the board. 2, so one, it's already a format that you'll just get more good matches by having double elim for your playoffs, obviously. And then secondly, since I know in theory Riot doesn't like double elim, then just start with the lesser tournament. Don't start with Worlds. What you do is you start with MSI, and then spoiler, even after this first time they run it, Monty, I guarantee they're like, holy shit, this is great. And then next year, they're just going to bring it to Worlds. So I know how Riot Games work. So to me, I agree. This first one, making double elim for the playoffs of MSI, just a slam dunk. I think it's a great move. It's a mega upgrade.
Yeah, it's a mega upgrade. I mean, there's so much to like about MSI, and I think Riot really did a very good job of kind of structuring this MSI tournament, because not only are we going to get double elim, but we also are going to get 2 seeds from the best regions, which I think is very important to competition, because a lot of times what either happens has happened at MSI is you get China versus Korea, or you get what is mostly a one-sided match between China or Korea and a different team. If there's an upset earlier in the bracket. And so it can feel kind of stale, whereas you'll get a lot more, I think, dynamic competitions and a harder competition, especially at the top. Because I don't mind watching, 4 Korean and Chinese teams in the semifinals of an MSI potentially, but it also increases the chances that you might have like an LEC upset or something like that. I don't think that's out of the cards. So I actually really like the fact that we're getting more of these teams coming into MSI. They're also
there's some big upsides. Think about it. One, it now means something if you're an LEC team to make playoffs, Monty. Like before, if you're the LEC team, you're supposed to be the 3rd best team anyway. Like semis is the minimum. Like that, everyone overrated that. And then the other thing as well, I'll say, is as a historian, it did ruin the storyline of League of Legends that you can't ever do the Grand Slam unless you're the team that wins the spring split. If you're the 2nd best team in spring, after that, like Dan1 and Sam SKT, after that, you can be the best team ever, but you can never have that year where you win everything. So I always thought that sort of just spoiled it compared to other esports. Like in every other esport, all the top teams pretty much go to the big tournament, So that's a massive plus. Yeah.
It'll also just make, I think, the practice environment better. So this is kind of an understated aspect of this, but a lot of the teams that go to MSI gain very valuable experience, particularly Western teams. And if you want to increase Western parity, you need to send more than just 1 team per region to go into that scrim environment. It will also get them better quality scrim practice partners because they'll have more Asian teams to practice against. Everything about it is good. Also, they are using GSL groups like we've been suggesting for many years, which are, for those of you who don't know, 4-team double elimination brackets. What I guess I should describe the format. So 5 teams are automatically advanced into the double elimination bracket, so they do not play the group stage. Those 5 teams are, this year will be the 2 LCK seeds because they won Worlds. The 1 LPL seed, the 1 LCS seed, and the 1 LEC seed. The other 3 teams, so the 2 LPL seed, the 2 LCS, and the 2 LEC will join other minor region seeds into these 2 4-team brackets. So you have 8 teams. 2 teams will advance who just win their groups, so who come out in the winners bracket, and the 2 teams who are in the losers bracket are playing each other for that final seed. So you get 8 teams in the double elimination bracket. This is all wonderful. Gives minor league teams the chance to play. Every match has stakes, which is something we've been asking for a long time. So we don't play meaningless games. Minor region teams can fight each other probably in the losers bracket, and 1 team will actually win a best of 3 series. It's all very exciting. Then you have a double elimination, which is exactly what you want. In League of Legends, as we've learned over the years, and as Riot agrees now in literally every region, because LCK is now double elimination as well in playoffs, and at MSI, and I guess just not at Worlds, which obviously makes no sense, but they will probably change in the future if I had to guess.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of other reasons I think it's awesome. One, this now means, and this actually is a precursor for something else they've done pretty cool for Worlds, which we'll get to in a minute. One, because of the lower bracket, guys, this just makes it so much more likely that you get the best European and best North American team play each other in a best-of-5 series at MSI. Like, it just means in the lower bracket, they're probably going to meet early on and actually get a proper series. So we get the real hype of like the regional stuff in a best-of-5. And then on similar lines, it also means we're going to get one of my dreams that I've never had in League of Legends, which is I don't want it to be like at these tournaments we just saw where like the best examples that when EDG beat Damwon that 1 year, and it was like, wow, 5 games. Imagine if they could have played again in the same tournament. Wouldn't that be incredible to know? Would they win twice? Would, like, for example, maybe EDG would have figured more things out, won even more dominantly, or maybe Damwon would have come back and smashed them. That's the problem is, as you say,
versus IG is the famous
because in
one,
Korea,
right?
they've got now double limb. I don't have to worry about that. China's had it for years, if people don't know, and they just play so many matches. Now, finally, I get to see when the best Korean and best Chinese team plays, I might actually get to see it twice. That sounds awesome. That sounds really fucking sick. Like, the potential storyline wise, strategically for what that could be fucking incredible, mate. That could be really next level shit. Yeah, I'm looking forward. So we should move on to some of the other stuff, Shane's done.
So yeah, I mean, look, we're over the moon. This is exactly what you want for MSI. In my mind, MSI is now. So first off, MSI sucked balls before as a tournament, and now I actually like it better than Worlds.
Especially with the two teams, that factor makes it. I think you can argue at the end of this year, this might be the best tournament of the year. MSI, it looks like it could be.
It certainly is, as the structure to do it. And now we get into our classic double elimination versus single elimination debate, which we have to. It's very difficult because I have to lose a bunch of IQ points to put myself in Riot's mentality and try and think this through. But what's so insane to me, again, going back now, all of your regions are double elimination. You say MSI is double elimination. Your Valorant World Championship is double elimination, and you make this article. So if you guys, there was one article that was kind of an overview, and it links to a second article that is a deep dive into the formats. And I'm citing the second article here, which is that they have a whole debate about double elimination versus single elimination. And so they basically say the pros
Just to be clear, the difference is the first post is the one called State of the Game. Monty's talking now about the one that's called like Format Explainer.
It says deep dive LoL esports international event formats, which I will link right now in the chat, and we'll put a link below the video as well.
It's a different one entirely. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, exactly. Their meta of articles within articles is very interesting.
There's like 3 articles technically, but yeah, keep going.
So double elimination versus single elimination. So we're going to go through Riot's reasoning here and show you guys why this is just ridiculous. So double elimination provides the following benefits: quote, fluke, unquote, correction. The lower bracket run. Eliminating variance, meaning that eventual champion is more often viewed as the better team, and the 2 teams playing in the final are the undisputed top teams. Yes, these are all positives, I agree. Delivering more distinct finals placement. An 18 double elimination bracket will determine first, second, third, and fourth, as well as pairs for 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th. Comparatively, a single elimination bracket only results in a 1st and 2nd place finisher, but then has ties for 3rd through 8th, which is not true. You have a 3rd and 4th, and then you have 5th through 8th. So that's just wrong. Double elimination, and then they say the drawbacks are lower stakes for upper bracket matches. No.
By the way, they're actually totally wrong about esports history even there, because here's what's mad. You know, when they say that line, it's so authoritatively as though, remember, they're explaining to us in this article, Monty, what double elim is. When they say, and when you have a single elim bracket, then you only find out who first and second are. It's not even true. Like, if you don't know, back in the day, like the tournaments used to even run like 5th to 8th place matchups to see who would finish in like the thing in different tournaments in history. It's not even true, is it? So
yeah, they're just not doing that is the answer. But as usual, Riot's going to, here's what Riot does, guys, in all their messaging. They omit everything that they don't want you to discuss, which they do here as well. We'll get to it. So they say lower stakes for upper bracket matches. I don't think any playoff best of 5 at the most important tournament of the year has low stakes. So I guess you could say lower, but by how much? My answer would be a negligible amount. Teams with a stronger record have no distinct advantage in the finals. technically true, but you play a lot fewer matches and aren't on the brink of elimination, so you don't have to show strategies. You get to watch more of the other team. So, but I guess specifically in the finals, there's no distinct advantage. I would say side select is a pretty distinct advantage in League of Legends that you can get in the finals. You get a side select advantage. And then
also, let's just throw this in there. I've watched a lot of different esports games. League of Legends is one of the only esports games ever where, like, I don't know if you know this, Monty, in CSGO and Counter-Strike in general for like 20 years, it's a famous meme to make fun of shithead fans when they say like, oh, the team was just saving strats for the major. That actually can happen in League of Legends. League of Legends for real is the game where you want to play it as few times as possible for your opponent. And if he hasn't seen some of the things you've got in your pocket, can win you the whole tournament. Like the difference in games like CSGO and other ones is like, in those games, you show your hand every fucking game pretty much. Like, it's not like that. But I agree. For League, it actually is a massive advantage to come from upper rank. I predict. Like, I reckon if you watch this MSI, I think in League especially, because how different the game is draft-wise, I think it'll be a huge advantage to come from upper.
Right. And for those of you people who are like, no, you get more practice in the lower bracket. Well, if it was an advantage, why don't teams intentionally lose to go into the lower bracket then? Huh? Dumbass? Why is that? Yeah, because it's not an advantage. Anyway, moving on. Double elimination. This is my favorite one, Thorin.
Let me counterpoint that a second, because I know the obvious classic thing people say, it is an argument, is like, here's the problem. Are you ready? People always say, yeah, but if you're the team that does like an epic low bracket run, you warmed up, right? Here's the problem with that. That is called confirmation bias, and here's why. Yeah. Because if instead you're being warmed up is actually you just burned out from playing a load of the games and you get smashed in the final, that's magically how you describe the exact same additional games. You'd go, I played too many games, I was burned out, I showed my hand, because all you're doing is picking whether they win or lose. Yeah. It's only when the team wins the final you're going to go, wow, they got into like really good shape. And
whoa, they warmed up.
We can't know even what would happen if they came from upper bracket. So I get why that one sometimes catches people, but it's actually not that big a deal, that one. So yeah, go on.
Okay, so this is my favorite one, Thorin. Double elimination significantly lengthens an event like Worlds. And you might be like, okay, what do you mean by lengthens? Do you mean that you play more matches or that it would take a longer time to play Worlds? And here's where Riot's bullshit comes in. So they say right here, because they explain further. Additionally, the number of games required to play out Worlds as a full double elimination tournament would significantly lengthen an event that currently lasts close to 6 weeks. So now we know what they mean by lengthen. They mean that it would take more weeks to do it. But it doesn't take more weeks to do it because the international happens in a very short time frame and has a double elimination.
If people have missed what they're doing here, like Monty said, is they explaining generally double elim. So they have to explain the positives because they've just brought double elim in for MSI. But then they have to, without even letting you ever think, that's weird, why not Worlds then? They have to go, but for Worlds it would be bad though. And then that's like you say. Bizarrely, by the way, Monty, it doesn't magically extend MSI in some way that ruins it. It doesn't exactly. It's only Worlds. And by the way, the reason that never made any sense for Worlds, I've told you this so many times. I think Worlds is the most wasteful format in the history of esports. It takes like a fucking month and a half to run a 8-team single elim tournament with shitty groups. Like what? Like the joke is in CSGO or Dota, purely for economical reasons, you'd have the tournament in half the time, or maybe even less. So, it'd be like 2-week tournament, wouldn't it?
So the last 2 weeks of Worlds, guys, contain exactly 3 best of 5s. There's 2 semifinals and a final. So what Riot is telling you here, and by the way, they saved these little nuggets of double elimination significantly lengthens an event until the very end, right? But these are the secret reasons. So here's the secret reason, guys. The secret reason is they can't possibly conceive of running Worlds in one location, or at least the last 2 weeks in one location. For whatever reason, in their little Riot minds, they say, we must change cities between after quarterfinals and then again after semifinals. If you did all of the playoffs in one location, then you could just put more matches in those 3 weeks and they would still be spaced out. You wouldn't have to run 2 streams. 3 weeks is plenty of time to run an 8-week double elimination bracket, or 8-team rather. So your question is, Thorin, really interesting, because why, as you say, why doesn't an 8-team double elimination bracket at MSI significantly lengthen MSI? Well, that's weird. It's almost like they're saying we have to move cities, which, by the way, doesn't do anything. And you know what's especially hilarious, Thorin? Worlds this year is in Korea. It takes 3 hours by train to get anywhere in Korea. You could have literally the entire tournament in Seoul, and everyone in Korea would have a great chance to go watch the games, and they would travel for it, and it wouldn't be a big deal. You do not have to move around to different cities. Fans will travel. You will still sell out the arenas. It is stupid. So here's what I wonder, Thorin. I wonder if their sponsors demand that they move around to these different cities. I wonder if their sponsors want them to have this spectacle like they did in America. And maybe it won't matter for Korea, but it might matter in Europe and China, which are obviously significantly larger geographically. And they may want that on-site representation around these countries. But this logic makes absolutely no sense. None at all. You don't have to lengthen
And it
the
relies you not knowing any other esport exists except League of Legends, which obviously I know is Riot's ideal scenario. But,
but you know, that's the whole point you just made, is that now you can even prove it in League of Legends because they did it in MSI, and they're not saying, well, what MSI takes 2 months now, because it doesn't, clearly. And because they're just going to do MSI in London, the one location, they can do that double elimination
basically, if anyone's ever seen that classic, it's not even really that classic, it was all right, that Christian Bale movie where they badly like rip off every dystopian movie, like Fahrenheit 459, you know, Equilibrium, the one where he was doing the gunjitsu or whatever, like. But if you remember, like I say, they just took Fahrenheit 451 mixed with a bit of 1984, mixed with like something else, right? And they just put it in this movie. And in the movie, though, if you remember, one of the premises is, because in their society, to eliminate all crime, they've removed emotion, and everyone takes like the equivalent of like an antidepressant or something every day. And what happens is, as this one character, spoiler, starts to like awaken his like emotion, he runs to like this window when it's raining, and he starts like clawing away. And they've even on the window put sort of tape that light gets through, but you can't see anything through it. It's like, so you can't quite make so. So he pulls this tape off, and he obviously sees like the beautiful image of like rain hitting a window on the outside. Like the joke is, that's what it's like to be a League of Legends fan if you came up in esports with Riot. Like you've just lived in this like sterilized society.
Plato's
like,
the cave.
Yeah, maybe emotion would be a good thing, but couldn't it get out of control and destroy it? Like, and then eventually, like, we come along and we start tearing down the walls. You're like, oh my god, there's a whole world out there. Oh my god, wait a minute, you mean the mutants aren't evil? They're actually the precursors of this society of esports that actually have all the technology to reveal. Oh my god, it's like mixed with Total Recall there, obviously. Shout out.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Plato cave allegory, where you LoL fans have just been chained to a rock, seeing shadows of the international, and now they've let you out of the cave, so you can actually, I don't know, just look at the international or look at this logic that they're using and see that it's entirely irrational. But also, what we're going to get to is the Swiss system eventually, after we get done with the single versus double elimination, which, if you watch Counter-Strike, it's just a fucking joke. So let's keep going.
The funniest part, but yeah, let's keep going.
No, the funniest part is their justifications for single elimination. Like, it's pretty funny that they pretend that double elimination significantly lengthens an event, when it's actually just their own stubbornness of moving the tournament that significantly lengthens the event. And they can't.
What's mad about this?
Whatever reason.
What's mad about this article here is, this is exactly how esports, how journalism isn't done. Like, this article is called like Format Explainer, and it's just full of like subjective opinions. It's like, what?
Yeah,
what are you explaining? Like what you're talking about here. They just put lines in there in the craziest authoritative voice that just mean nothing. Remember, by the way, if this was a column and it was like Thorin's thoughts on Worlds, and yeah, I can say like it increases the stakes. What I mean is, in my own subjective opinion, like when they put this sentence here, Monty, higher stakes for every game and increased importance of short-term advantages for single elim. This is a positive, they say. That's not even true. Like, for example, why would a quarterfinals match between the massive tournament favourite, so let's take SKT versus Gamma Bears from Season 3 Worlds, right? There was no stakes in that match. There was no importance. There was no pressure. Meanwhile, imagine, by the way, even the exact same Gamma Bears team dropping to the low bracket and playing a match to see if they're eliminated. It'd be way higher stakes in that game. What are you talking about? Like, this is such a weird subjective statement.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
Like, I know they mean for the final in a way it makes it more high stakes, but even then, like, really, that's kind of debatable, right?
Well, it's also like, what are the higher stakes? Because you could argue that double elimination creates more higher stakes games because there are more games, first off, and many of the stakes, especially in the lower bracket, are going to be higher, and the more parity you have. By
definition, by the way, there are going to be loads more incredibly high stakes matches in the lower bracket, like you say.
So, like, in terms of parity too, you could ask yourself, okay, what would be a higher stakes match? Like, would we say that at this last World that JDG versus Rogue was a high stakes match? The answer is no. But maybe Rogue hits somebody in the losers bracket. Maybe they hit RNG, and all of a sudden that match is a much higher stakes than either of those quarterfinal matches would have been. So yeah, I think that's like completely subjective and not true. And then also an increased importance of short-term advantages, draft strategy, meta reads, coaching, etc. It allows, this is a very interesting one, it allows a better prepared team with less mechanical or macro skill to win a series. What? Like,
You know what's
if
so
you are
crazy about that is like philosophically, what are Riot implying is good? Because
exactly,
Riot are
exactly.
saying that they actually think for real, guys, that there does not exist talent, ability. They want the team that prepares the best to win.
Well,
What sort of
also,
nerd shit is that? No, I want
also,
the best team to win. The one that played the best.
also, they're saying that they're implying that there's a distinct disadvantage to being a less mechanical, or having macro skill, which means that their game is prioritizing micro and mechanical play, and that's who they think should win the game, which is like, I don't even know where to go with that assumption. That is psychotic. But I think that if you do have a less mechanical and you are a macro team, that is just simply a different style of playing the game, and it is not rewarded by single
What a
elimination.
weird thing,
You
though.
could
Think about
still,
this.
if you were still a great macro team, you could still win a double elimination bracket in theory, right? Like, what is
By
that
the way,
logic?
they're completely wrong. But the other thing I'd also say is this: aren't all the best teams of all times the best macro teams? Like, am I missing something? What the fuck? Like,
we
and
we
those everyone's
literally just
favorite
got done
teams.
on that other show saying that Samsung White is the best team to ever win Worlds because they innovated the macro game the most.
Like, to me, that statement, like about the macro for real, is like if the NBA said, "Yeah, we're going to change the format because we want it to be that teams that prepare well but aren't as good in the fourth quarter win more games." Like, what are you talking about, you moron? That's your whole sport. If you don't know, the reason I picked the NBA on purpose, guys, is because the joke with an NBA game is you just tune into the fourth quarter, don't you? There's no point watching the rest of the game. Like, that's the game. No, and then also, by the way, when you go down, it gets so absurd. Like the second one. Do you want to keep going?
So good. Yeah, it gets so good. Let me read it. Then we could get mad. This is my favorite, dude. I hate all developers do this. Part of the beauty of our sport is that our meta evolves and changes over time. And as such, we believe that adapting to the meta is a core skill of professional LoL teams. Single elimination highlights this skill much more than double elimination. How? How does it do that? Okay.
No
So
reason given.
here's the
Nope.
implicit bias of that sentence, Thorin. The implicit bias is this: our game has a solvable meta and a limited depth. Therefore, you can't play too many games in a specific patch, or you can't adapt anymore, right? That is what they are saying. Now, what was great about this last Worlds is that there was huge meta depth, right? And we could have kept seeing it go on. Like, we saw so much change. Maokai, then Silas comes in, then all of a sudden Varus rises in priority, and then Maokai's back in the final once Silas isn't there. There's tons of really cool shit that was happening. So what they are saying is that, so first off, all developers do this because they say that, oh yeah, adaptation is a key skill in our esport. What this means is we can't balance the game. That is what it means at its core. That we have to continuously patch this game because we can't figure it out for ourselves. Therefore, we are saying that it's our pro players' duty in order to adapt constantly. That
So
is a
here's one
refrain.
for you. Are you ready for a mental one? I'll take the exact same thing they just said and just say they're totally wrong for 180-degree reasons. So when they say the beauty of their sport is that the meta evolves and you have to adapt to it, well, then if you have more games, it will evolve more and you'll have to keep adapting. And in fact, the team that has to play less games and do less adaptation by your own logic is a worse team. So what you're saying is you want to keep the format that means teams aren't as good at adapting and evolving in the meta. Because the other thing about that, by the way, that's mental is it's just so wrong as well. Like, I'll give you an example. How did teams adapt, Monty, to Season 5 World's meta? In my opinion, worst meta in the history of the game. The one where just in draft you had to ban, like, Mordekai's Gangplank. You remember the one where it was the three champions? They ruined the whole draft. No one adapts to that, by the way. That's like saying if we had a 100-meter race and we just chop one leg off everyone, whoever wins is the one who adapted. Yeah, sort of, but he didn't have a choice, did he? He just happened to run and flail, and he made it with one leg. Like, that's all you did to everyone in that tournament. Like, no, it doesn't matter if people played 10 games in that tournament or 50. You ruined that meta already. Right. So the other reason that's so egregious is, like, they're making their game sound like Dota or something. Like, the meta is way stricter in League. Come on, guys. Come on.
Well, no, they're not making it. That's the whole point, is that if they believe that their game has significant strategic depth, then logically more games should display more depth and adaptation. That's just true. So what they're telling you as fans is that their game sucks, and they think that there is a finite amount of adaptation, that double elimination will reveal that there is a strict underpinning of the meta that will not allow adaptation beyond a certain point. and that is why single elimination good. So that phrasing is by far the most insane phrasing that they have in this. And then finally, single elimination is less predictable for better or worse. Regions with fewer teams in the knockout bracket stage have a better chance to advance further in a tournament. I mean, that's just not true.
Like, but here's what's mad. Let's stop a second, because here's one thing that they did here that's really weird. But I know why again, Monty. Spoiler, Riot Games are a bunch of cocksuckers. Are you ready, guys? So notice how the only time they don't tell you what to think, they don't say on this one, single elimination is worse. Because Monty, in this article, they're explaining why they're simultaneously using single elim, but then also not you. So magically on single elim, the other two, remember, they're putting all these crazy loaded Satan sentences. This one just goes, single elimination is less predictable, for better or for worse. You know, you can take it or leave it. It's like, shut the fuck up, Riot, you actual rat. You can never admit, Riot Games can never just admit, like, which wasn't as good, what we did before. They have to, like, invent the new thing. And then the other thing is, by the way, that sentence alone is mental. That Riot Games, while explaining why they're picking a format, can't tell you if they think it's better or worse, that it's way less predictable in their game who will win the tournament or go far. They don't know if that's better or worse. They can put crazy loaded sentences, but they don't know if it's better or worse in their game that you can just win by luck, by their own admission, if you think about what that implies. Like,
right. And it's also regions with fewer teams in the knockout bracket stage have a better chance to advance further in a tournament. That's only true if there is parity between all terms in the knockout. Like, you could be G2 in one of G2's good years, like we've seen, and then make the world finals. You know, you could be an exceptional team within your region and be a finalist or win worlds. Like, that all the teams don't have equal skill. So no, a single elimination tournament doesn't mean that they have a better chance to advance further in the tournament, because the teams are not all of the same skill. And then also it says, which keeps more Cinderella storylines in play. What is the Cinderella storyline where somebody should have won worlds but didn't win worlds?
That's why that doesn't work, Monty.
People will say, oh, DRX was a Cinderella story. Was it? They beat everybody who was in front of them legitimately.
Here's the problem.
There's nothing to say that they wouldn't have won a double elimination bracket. There's nothing to say that they wouldn't have.
One, DRX wouldn't be Cinderella because they did win. Like, the problem with the Cinderella story is usually that you like don't win in the final, right? Here's why that doesn't even make sense. Because if, let's imagine DRX hadn't won and they lost to SKT in Game 5, Monty. Here's their Cinderella story. They beat two teams. Great. That's the crazy shit, man. Slow down. That's too many games for me and my brain to adapt to. Like, no, logically, a low bracket provides a craziest a Cinderella run. Like, if people want to see one, like, this is one that actually won TI, but go watch when, like, Team Liquid won TI that one year where they came, like, all the way through the low bracket. Like, shit like that is, by definition, the craziest Cinderella story. You might have to win, like, 7 series in a row, something mental, and the final. Like, that would be a way better Cinderella story. Like I say, the problem with your tournament already is it had too few games. That's why the idea these cocksuckers are going to pretend like a tournament bracket, Monty, which has 7 matches, 7 total matches, might have too many and might be like exposing the meta. Like, how shit is your game if you can only run in the whole year 2 international tournaments, and after like there's 3 matches in MSI and there's 8 at fucking 7 at work. So after 10 matches, your whole game's just like, well, that's it. We're hitting the bottom. We're scraping the ball now, guys. Like, what a shit game this must be.
And again, the only reason that they're doing this, which they're not telling you, is that they don't want to stop moving around different cities and they don't want to just stay in one place and run the double limb bracket. That is the maybe
here's an obvious thing,
reason, but that's the only reason I can think.
I'll tell you another flaw they've made in explaining this format. Notice they never at any point mention best of 3, Monty. Well, the most famous double elim tournament in the world is the International. And the International is best of 3 double elim until the final, right? They pretend here as though the only option was best of 5. Because think about their own arguments, Monty. If their own arguments are like, it's better to let, like, you know, not too many games, well, then have best of 3 double elim. Problem solved, right? They don't even introduce that as a possibility in the article. In the article, they make it sound like you got 2 choices. What they do now, or what we had before, there's nothing in between. There's no other options. Like, there's so many negotiation points, guys. So many.
It gets better, Thorin, because the very next paragraph after this is hilarious. At the center of our discussion is the idea of variance. The more matches you add, the more variance you remove from the system. For example, the better team may not always win a best of 1, but it is more likely to win a best of 3 and even more likely to win a best of 5. So what they're saying is, like you're saying, they like best of 5s because they reduce variance. But they like single elimination because it increases variance. Pick one. Just fucking pick one. Here's how you have to deal with formats. You are testing for something. The idea of a format is to create a test that teams pass. You can't change the test from event to event and say it's the same test. The teams are dealing with the same conditions. If you want to reduce variance, you run double elimination, you run triple elimination. There becomes like a point of no return, obviously, where there's just too many fucking games. The event lasts too long. That's why triple elimination is like, well, technically better. We're not going to run it because it's impractical. But you already know a practical system, which is double elimination, to decrease variance. So pick which one you want. Do you want high variance? Best of one single elimination bracket, motherfuckers. Do it. Do it if that's what you're testing for. I dare you, do it. If you don't want that, then just admit that double elimination works. And your real reason for doing this is that you refuse to have it in the same location, which is the only possible reason.
What annoys me is just as a journalist and a content creator, like the format of the actual article and the vehicle they've chosen, Monty. There's two ways they could have done this that would be great. One would be an actual format explainer, which is what we've just done now. You explain the pros and the cons of all the different types. You even do some examples, like you say, so in this year, this team did this, like that shows how that happens. Here was an upset run, show that, right? You either do that, so that's just an objective format explainer, here's what the format is, or you do, here's Riot Games explaining our reasons why we're picking this format, like you say, Monty. So if they actually said, I actually want less variance. I want it to be, in their case, they'd want more, wouldn't they? Like, I want more variance, so upsets happen and crazy things. Like, at least I'd be able to, abide by that. They've just gone in the middle. What they've done is they've gone, format propaganda brainwashing. Here is why our format is the best. And all the ones we didn't pick aren't as good, except at the other tournament, where they are better and good. And you will,
and our other esport, where they're also good for some reason. I mean, and here's the thing about Valorant, too. Valorant World Championship was all run in one place, so they could do the double elimination bracket. Just run it in one place. That's the real reason. Or just say the real reason. For fuck's sake, just be honest. Just say, we like double elimination, but due to logistics and our previous, negotiations with our partners that say we have to move around, we'll be reevaluating that for future World Championships. But for now, I have to tell you something, by the way, part of the tournament.
A lot of people don't know this about Valorant, but there's actually one detail in Valorant, and I can't talk to anyone else about this, so I can't even make this joke to anyone else. But the joke is Riot Games will never learn from their mistakes. And here's why I know that, guys. Because the one element they added to the Valorant circuit that makes no sense to me is they actually brought back from Season 2 Worlds that the top team for a region just skips to the playoffs. Into a new esports game in the 2020s. These idiots will never learn, guys. They will never learn. They have to actually just fail until that's the only way Riot learns, in my opinion.
Well, they're doing that at MSI now too. Both Korean teams don't.
Exactly.
And one with the top seeds of every region, which I'm okay with because MSI is supposed to be a shorter tournament. It's kind of whatever, and it's fine. I'm not so okay with that at Worlds, but we'll get into the Swiss. The Swiss is the next. Oh, I do have one more point to make about this, which is this ridiculous post. To your point earlier about the Cinderella story, the metaphor of Cinderella is a rags to riches story, right? Cinderella is poor. She's a servant. So therefore, Cinderella really needs to be at rock bottom for the Cinderella story to work. If you think that Cinderella means you play a few, 3 best of 5s and you win them, that's like middle class Cinderella. It's not as exciting when you come from the stable background. Like you're saying with Team Liquid at TI, it's when you play 7 best of 5s or whatever and you're really just scraping the fucking bottom of the barrel. That's a Cinderella story. You don't even know what a Cinderella story is, Riot.
Technically, at Worlds itself, the playoffs isn't the Cinderella story for DRX. That's why we all roll the story back to when they're in the fucking playoffs of LCK. It goes, playoffs LCK lose, into regional shouldn't have been there, into groups, dodgy maybe if they make it. That's the Cinderella. Notice we had to build an extra part of the Cinderella story before the playoffs, whereas the whole playoffs should have been it, right?
Yeah. And also, again, there's nothing to say the DRX would not have won a double elimination bracket because they beat a whole bunch of legit teams and they beat everybody that was in front of them. So they could have won double elim. It's not a good example to say DRX this year. In fact, I would say that there really hasn't been maybe Suning, you would say, is like a Cinderella story making the finals, but there are very few in League of Legends history.
That's a quick aside, because I know this is a point that newer people always get lost on. If you're thinking but why is it such a big deal? Why can't the team that won just be the one that won? That's just a sign, I'm sorry, that you're too new to esports. Once you've watched enough of these worlds and you realize we only get one of these motherfuckers a year. And so I've watched League of Legends now since 2012, and I have only seen fucking 11 basically, because we don't count them. I've seen 11 of these. The joke is in CSGO, we used to have 3 majors a year. A year. So as a result, when you've had to watch a decade and see people come along and be the best team in the world, best player in the world, innovate the game, but they do it in spring and then they can't win Worlds because it's too far away and it's a one-off tournament. And if you lose one game in the quarterfinals, you're out and the whole thing's not, that just eventually starts to really grate. I'm telling you. Just, you have to trust me if you're too new, but just wait like 3 years and you too will realize why you will want double limb as a format, especially for, by the way, especially for League of Legends because you only get the one Worlds, like especially.
Yeah, and by the way, one more thing before we do Swiss, which is going to be a major talking point, but the last sentence just fucking slays me, Thorin. For Worlds, we are leveraging double elimination in the earlier stages of the tournament because they're doing GSL groups. That part's fine, by the way. We like that part. To give teams time to ramp into Worlds and are maintaining high stakes, which again, high stakes is subjective. I think losers bracket games are incredibly high stakes, personally. And the winner go home knockout stage that has delivered such amazing stories over the past 10 plus years. I guess we're just rewriting history now. How many of these Worlds finals have been dog shit?
Most of them.
Like, you're coming off this insane high, the best Worlds final of all time that we just saw, but so many 3-0s, so many non-competitive throwaway 3-1s, so many years where we had the best matches happening in the quarterfinals or the semifinals. That is just a lot. What do you mean amazing stories? This is what Riot does. They're like, wow, we're the best. And then you're like, well, what if we could go, what if you just did something different? It could have been even better. So they're just, again, patting themselves on the back and ignoring the fact that Double Limb would have almost certainly produced better Worlds for the last 10 plus years.
I mean, we just did the list, Monty. If you look at the winners of all the Worlds, the majority are stomps. Stomps. Like one team just heavily wins over. Even if they give up a game, it's like the Samsung White RNG, who gives a shit? That should have been a 3-0. It was a 3-0, effectively. No one gives a shit about the one game they lost. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the double elimination versus single elimination debate. And now we're going to move into, well, okay, I guess first off, let's do play-ins. Here's what they're doing. They're going to be doing
the LEC and the LCS part one I do think is legit. Like I said earlier, that one, there's another move I think is unilaterally a great move, which is because the big debate, think about what we're trying to solve for here. The problem is too many LCS teams. LCS isn't that good a region compared to the other 3 major regions. And then on top of that, you never get these matches that we all want, which is LEC versus LCS in best of 5 match. So what they've done is they've taken the premise of having like a last chance qualifier, and they're just going to have the 4th seed of LCS and LEC play each other a best of 5. Winner gets to go to Worlds. That's fucking sick. That is an awesome move. That means, by the way, you can't even lose at Worlds. If you're a Western fan, you at least get the grudge match at a minimum. Maybe no other team makes the playoffs. Spoiler, I actually think that's the real thing that the penny hasn't dropped yet still, Monty. I noticed this during this last Worlds. They don't realize cause Rogue wasn't supposed to make out this group. It is going to be a bleak playoffs if we keep similar limb for the rest of the years, boys. I know they said they're like, no, there won't be any Cinderella teams in the playoffs. The playoffs from now on in League of Legends will just be LCK and fucking LEC and LPL rather. I'm telling you, there'll be like one team every now and then. So actually that already invalidates most of what Riot just said. But if you come to this part now, at least this time you get the matchup, like, because that was the shittest part of League of Legends. Think how many years of discussions we've had, Monty, of like, well, TSM's on top in NA, but what would happen if they played Alliance? You never get to find out. They'll never play in a match. Oh, but Fnatic, they won. They're 18-0, Monty. What if they were to play against the great Cloud9? Never going to happen. They can never play in a match. So I always thought that was one of the biggest flaws of your entire format, is that essentially the match, which would be the biggest viewed match for the Western audience, never gets to happen. So this way, we guaranteed it. We get at least an interesting match. And I'll even say this right now. This is actually going to be every year a really hype match. And here's why I'll tell you that. Because even though people will go, but LEC over LEC, I'll tell you what, if Mad Lions this Worlds had played EG would have won that match. I'm telling you right now. They would have won that best of 5 series. I just believe it. Like, I think that's the case. Like, the better team. So to me, I think that's actually like a very unique way of almost creating WWE style, the match you want. But they've done it within the format. So great job. I think it's a slam dunk.
And not only that, but play-ins itself has been really streamlined. Again, it's going to be 8 teams that are GSL groups, so 2 groups of 4, double elimination. LPL and LCK no longer participate in play-ins. All 4 of their seeds go to groups. That's great. LEC and LCS will be sending, their some of their seeds into the group stage as well. So you get minor regions. And this is what we want, which is like not DRX and RNG just completely shit stomping everybody in these brackets. And we don't have a bunch of meaningless games. Now, the interesting thing about play-ins is that it used this last year, for example, play-ins took 7 days to finish, right? With these 2 GSL groups, they have 12 best of 3s that they are going to be playing, which you could play 3 best of 3s a day in over 4 days. Like, that seems relatively reasonable to me. Some of these play-in days had 8 games already, which would be, about the average, maybe a little higher. The average number of games in 3 best of 3s is like, 7 or 8, depending on whether they go to 2 or 3 games. So you could certainly run that. And again, this goes hilariously. If they change play-ins to 4 days, again, that invalidates their point about not being enough time for double elimination, because you've actually just cut down 3 broadcast days off of the start of the tournament. And I think they're actually going to do fewer group stage with the Swiss system. They're going to do fewer group stage day games as well. So I actually think they're trimming the number of broadcast days on both play-ins and groups, and then which would, in theory, give them more time to do the rest of Worlds. So I think they're just lying about this. We'll know when they release the schedule later this year whether this was a lie, and we'll be sure to bring it back up. But love this play-ins. You get you get 4 teams out of here. In the end, I believe. Yes, 4 teams out of here. Oh no, you only get 2 teams out of here. Excuse me, you get 2 teams out of here. Which is fine. You only want 2 teams in the group stage anyway. That actually makes the group stage, the Swiss system, much more exciting. But here's the key, guys. As we get into the Swiss system, from this point forward in Worlds, it is a CSGO major. It is a Swiss system into a single elimination bracket. So who better to tell you about the flaws of this system than Thorin? So go.
Right. Basically, there are a lot of flaws with the Swiss system. And what happens is you don't notice it for years, though, because what happens is initially, I'll give you a quick analogy. In games, when you change a setting, like your mouse sensitivity or your mouse, how for the first week, you always think you've cracked the code, like, whoa, it's way better now. Like, I've got a great set. No, what you're finding is because you've tweaked the setting, you're enjoying some benefit of a slightly different setting on your computer. Like if you put the mouse sensitivity up, you'll hit a load more crazy flick shots. But what happens is when you played long enough and it all evens out, you'll realize like, oh, but since I put the sensitivity higher, for example, like spraying with the AK is worse. Like I can't do like fine precision movement. So similarly, the problem with Swiss is elements like there's no groups, so anyone could play anyone. That sounds awesome, right? Imagine, wow, we could play everyone. But the flaw is this: what determines who plays who? And essentially, this is the flaw with Swiss system. One, you notice in Swiss, they're doing the same as CSGO. It's best of 1, except for the elimination or the progression match. So the reason they introduced that is because it used to be best of 1 the whole thing, which was a nightmare. But I personally think if you do Swiss, it has to be best of 3 the whole time. Again, for variance reasons. Because essentially, I'll quickly explain what a nightmare scenario, and this always happens in Swiss, goes like. Because you don't have a proper seeding, this isn't tennis, you don't have a 1 to 16 seeding, you're going to have scuffed seeding. So in the CSGO major, they just do the seeding unironically based on like regional qualification, who won 3-0 in a different Swiss system, who 3-2 the system, who came from the previous part of the tournament. So they use weird stuff. In League, it would be even worse. They're going to use things like, think about how they seed Worlds currently, where LCS team gets to be a number 1 seed in Pool 1. Well, if you apply that seeding, here's how it would work. Imagine, I'll give you a quick example. I used this last Worlds Fields. I'll quickly give you an example of a dry run. Imagine Rogue, who remember would be a Pool 1 team. They'd be a top 4 seed. That means in the first game, they would play a bottom 4 seed. So logically, of the 16 teams or whatever, like let's imagine Rogue played against, I'll take like Flying Oyster from Oceanic region, right? They would probably win that game, right? So that means you go to the 1-0 game, Rogue's in the 1-0 game, but we all know Rogue isn't a top team at the tournament. They're like a middle team in the field. Now imagine, because they beat Flying Oyster, in a different game, who was the number 1 team from NA? It was Cloud9, remember? Well, imagine Cloud9 had played against, pick who you want here, DRX. Well, no, that because they'd lose that game. I'm going to make them win this game. Let's say Cloud9 played against GAM, right? And Cloud9 wins. That means that now Rogue and Cloud9 play a game. The winner is one game from making the playoffs, and they've only played nobodies. They haven't played a single top team. That is why bad seeding fucks Swiss system. It actually makes Swiss system sometimes the most unfair format. I always describe it like this. What Swiss system with bad seeding allows is teams that are like actually not that good to get lucky and play bad teams and get through. That's like getting an easy group as a bad team. Or you can have a top team, get loads of really killer teams that are too good and lose after playing Gen G, DRX, and then at the end, I'm out and I'm told I'm shit by the format. But I played all the killers just because of bad seeding. Bad seeding can ruin the whole thing. And the problem is this, because all the games except the promotion or relegation are best of one, bad seeding compounds with best of ones. So now you get, now imagine, by the way, a world where even a rogue did a proper upset. Now they're also going to ruin the whole bracket. Because now imagine in the first game, like you did there, imagine you had Cloud9 play DRX. Because it's a BO1, Cloud9 wins. Now imagine being the 0-1 team where your first opponent is DRX in the Swiss system. Remember, that means when like Flying Oyster lose, like, oh, cool, well, at least the game's going to get easy. It was Rogue in that game. Oh, DRX now, brilliant. Like essentially, like I say, you have to play a bunch of these tournaments out. But what you'll see is you very rarely get a great outcome out of this, I'm afraid.
Remember,
rarely.
This is the same Riot Games that just said that best of ones have the highest variance. And so they were changing to, like, why is it that you want lower variance in best of threes in play-ins, but you want higher variance in best of one in Swiss in the more challenging part of the tournament? Like, the logic is not internally consistent for what you're testing for in this tournament. And not only that, but if you guys know CSGO, the seeding blows in CSGO, and CSGO constantly has international tournaments to seed the teams. What are we going to go back to? We're going to reach
at least, I agree. It's at least
MSI?
hypothetically possible to seed in CSGO. Let's be real. In League of Legends, it is actually practically impossible.
And guess what, Thorin? You know what crucial detail they omitted from all this? How they're going to seed these teams. Because I was like, oh, Swiss, let me just look and see how they're going to seed it, because it's probably insane. Oh, they didn't say that. Probably because there's two options, guys. They don't know how they're going to seed it yet. That's a strong possibility, I would say. They haven't figured it out, so they're not telling us. Or it's so shit that they don't want us to know because it's obviously garbage.
By the way, they can't use the previous seeding system for the reason Monty said. Because in the previous seeding system, DRX was ranked below Flying Oyster, if you don't know. That's the way the old system worked. That's what you know what I tried red pilling people on this literally like 5 years ago, Monty. I tried doing a video where I showed people, you understand that Riot thing of like we protect the regions by keeping the part actually fucks the West harder, because what it means is when you're the number one seed from the West, you get butt fucked by like your group, your pool 2 teams are like number 2 LPL, number 2 fucking LCK. It's just over for you. It's just over for you already.
Here's the thing, Thor. Are they going to do totally random seeding and just throw up their hands and say we can't seed these teams? Or are they going to be done? The problem is,
there's a world where that might be the case, Monty, because what you do there, this is a classic dirty trick from TOs, is you set in place the machine of your format, but then you pretend like no human was involved. And you're like, well, Monty, it's randomized, so whoever wins, that's just for the fates to decide. So you've decided it by making a bad system.
Well, and here's the other thing, Thorin. I could accept this Swiss system with shitty seeds if we had double elimination in the playoffs to correct for some of the variance that could happen in this stage. Because here's what happens. To Thorin's point, now it's not all the time in CSGO. This last major had a lot of really fucking weird-ass upsets that happened in the Swiss system, including FaZe getting knocked out in the Swiss system, the defending champion, which is like outrageous, because they suffered
something like 3 of the top 4 teams didn't even make the playoffs, so people don't know. Yeah.
Right. So you can see that the Swiss system isn't even good in a format where you have good seeding. But when it comes to the playoffs, okay, so most of the time I will say, even if you are a good enough team to make the playoffs, you can squeak in as a lower seed, maybe like, 6th through 8th seed at the very last. But then you're playing up against a first seed, and then you end up with a situation where, again, your best match of the tournament could happen in the quarterfinals, because the team that gets out second, because remember, the first 2 seeds are equal, so they're going to be randomized. So then you could play 2nd versus 7th or whatever, and then that match is the best match of the tournament because Swiss sucks, and then you don't have a double elimination bracket. So you can't, let's be very clear, you can run this Swiss system. It's not great, but you have to have double elimination to correct for the variance that the Swiss system is giving you.
There's also a couple of elements that will seem really lost because they're specific to League of Legends. So, for example, one factor I think is very negative is in League of Legends specifically, think about what Riot just said about all the other elements they like about double elim and stuff. League of Legends specifically is a game about scouting your opponent. CSGO isn't like that to the same degree. In CSGO, it's more like an NFL game. Like we both know roughly what the playbooks are. Let's see who executes better. League of Legends is like you're playing someone and not even knowing how they're going to play the game because you've never faced them. You've seen like 4 weird games of them playing someone else. So one thing I will say is this. I think this is terrible for League of Legends, mate. How the fuck can we have a world championship where I don't know who I'm playing till tomorrow, but it's today and I still don't know? I need to wait till this match finishes.
Counterpoint.
You know what I mean?
Counterpoint. You don't have to play 3 different teams in the same day before, again, at Worlds, which is what you had to do before.
I never should have been there anyway with that many days. I never understood why that was still
slightly better.
Because I actually think, essentially, Swiss system itself, as presented now, is still better than the fucked up group regionalization thing they had before. Because I always thought that region thing of like they can't be in the same group ruined the groups completely. Because it made seeding not just bad, it made it like inherently bad. Because like, the best example is this last Worlds, guys. I just said to you, like DRX in the main event was it was the last place seeded team. They were joint last place seeded. They won the fucking tournament. Like you cannot allow seeding like that. That is terrible. So I think it's a slight upgrade, but the problem is, like we're talking about, I do think there's downsides to it. Like for example, I think for League it's going to be terrible, mate. Like you will actually have way more upsets. Like think about this. Imagine Gen G has to play against some like solid team they've never played before tomorrow. Yeah. What? With no practice whatsoever, no time to prep.
I mean, Riot's probably jacking themselves off thinking about this because they love these.
Oh, they hope. Here's the thing: they really hope this is going to provide crazy Cinderella story. I can tell. I can already tell.
I mean, it's clearly designed that way, especially because the seeding is absolutely impossible under the circumstances of the league circuit, which inevitably is going to make really weird.
As you touched on before, in true Riot Games fashion, they've brought in a format that I've only just got everyone in CS:GO to agree. Yeah, actually, this has to be best of 3 because it's shit, isn't it? It took me years because, as I said, like that thing to the people before, you have to sort of see a bunch of these tournaments play out to realize, oh, wait, it's not actually that there's one team failed, like FaZe Clan one team. Here's the difference. If FaZe Clan failed, maybe FaZe Clan's just bad. If like 4 out of the top 5 teams can't even make the playoffs, the format sounds a bit dodgy. You know what I mean? Because they were the best teams. Like, as you say, Monty, we're not even guessing in CSGO. We saw the whole circuit. We know that some of these teams were the absolute nuts. They just lost a couple of BO1s. And by the way, I'll throw this in as well. One of the reasons the FaZe one was especially egregious is because before FaZe got to the best of 3, their 2 BO1s were against other top 5 teams in the tournament because how bad the seeding was. So they played 2 BO1s, but against other favorites to win the event, essentially. Like that just ruins the output, you know?
All right. So let me talk about the logistics of this. Because when I see formats, I also wonder purely from an like a tournament operations standard, how it's going to work and how it's going to function in terms of days, which nobody but me is going to talk about publicly, probably, because no one else has dealt with this like I have. But when it comes to these games, so
as an aside, one thing we should also mention, because this is true, I saw the Twitch chat, saw this as I was scrolling, but they're right. They have the other thing I hate, Monty, which is when they fucking put the article as by LoL esports staff. There's no such human in the world as LoL esports staff. So what that means is you just won't put someone's name on it because you think it'll get hated. Like, grow the fuck up, right? Get a commissioner and have their name on this fucking article.
Allegedly, it's Naz who's the head of global Riot esports, right? Like, I guess she's the one who's ultimately in charge. Or John Needham, who's the president of... Or
put his name on it then.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. Anyway...
Stand behind what you're doing.
They have been better about doing that recently, but not great. Okay, so let's talk about the logistics. So we might be wondering, is this going to take more or less time, the Swiss system, than to run the old system? So the old group stage took 48 games plus tiebreakers. So there were 48 best of ones plus however many tiebreakers there were. There were always tiebreakers, like 2 or 3, sometimes more, sometimes less in a given year. So we'll ballpark it at like 50 games, right? Now, the Swiss system, we can't know exactly how many games they will have, right? Because it's going to be best of 3s, which creates variance. But we know there's 20 best of 1s. And so there's 20 games, and then there's 13 best of 3s. Let's say 7 of the best of 3s are 14 games, or 2-0s. So 7 of the best of 3s are 2-0s, and 6 of the best of 3s are 2-1s. So that would be 52 games. So let's say there's approximately 52 games based on averages. So with that format in mind, Now in play-ins, so usually in groups they do in the past they've done 6 best of ones a day plus any tiebreakers at the end. In play-ins they do 8 best of ones. So we know Riot is willing to run up to 8 games in a day. So I think probably what their actual scheduling is going to be is they are going to do all 8 games of the first best of one. So the first 2 days will be 8 best of ones. The second and third days will be 2 best of threes, 2 best of ones. The fifth and sixth days will be 3 best of threes each. And then the final day will be 3 best of threes. So that covers it. So you basically finish in 7 days.
By the way, you know one thing as well.
Right,
notice they've also baked into this another assumption, which is not a given whatsoever, which is the notion that every game has to be on one mainstream. Yeah. If people don't know, the reason why TI has run such a compact format for so many years is because they do 2 streams. That's why you can have every match be a series.
The major, it plays games simultaneously as well.
Same thing. To me, that's one thing I've always thought is mad. Not least because, one, if you have multiple streams, you can have more games. But even better, you can make the mainstream just all the best games, you fucking idiot. That way I don't have to watch GAM play against some shit team. I can only watch the best matches. Why would you not want that on your mainstream? And then, if I don't want that, you just pick up all the free viewership on the B stream. That's a sick approach.
But again, Thorin, this also plays into the fact that all of Riot's assumptions lead to we can't have double elim because of time. We know from the majors, you can run this exact same Swiss system in 3 or 4 days if you want to, if you have simultaneous games, right? So you could do it in fewer days if you ran games concurrently. And then you could save time to do more double elimination things for the most important matches of your tournament. Will they do that? No, apparently not, because there's, quote, not enough time. Actually, that's not the quote. The quote was, it lengthens it, whatever. But the point is I think they will run this format over 7 days. Now, the previous group stage ran in 8 days. So maybe they could stretch it out more if they wanted to. They could run it in 8 days. But I think probably for cost reasons and because it makes sense to run it in 7, they'll run it in 7. But you have to remember, guys, that again, they are just like in play-ins. They're going to probably have fewer days of actual
by the way, I've just noticed, chat is right. If you actually search the word random in the article, Monty, you're going to be really upset, mate. Just search it quickly. Just see what the first thing you'll find is. First instance of it. There's only one. It's only used one time.
Oh, each of the 16 teams will be randomly paired against an opponent from a region other than their own. Great.
That means, guys, what I just said before can literally happen. Rogue could have gone and in the 0-0 match played Flying Oyster. In fact, even worse, are you ready? I'll make a worse one for you. Flying Oyster could actually play against 100 GAM in the opening match, and one of those teams is 1-0. Meanwhile, are you ready? Keyword randomly, Monty. I'll do the other side. One match I've just made is GAM versus Flying Oyster. One of those is going to be 1-0. Then I have Gen G plays against T1. One of those teams is 0-1.
No, they can't play against the same region.
Oh, sorry, LTK,
Whatever,
LPL then. So let's make it JDG against Gen G in their opener. And one of those teams is not only 1-0, one of them 0-1 now after that.
You could literally have 4 NA versus or I guess 3 NA versus EU games. You could literally randomly have 3 NA versus EU games in the first round. That is insane. So yeah, I mean, they couldn't figure out the seeding is the answer. So it is in fact random, but you can't play against a team from your region, which does actually make it slightly better. It does make it slightly better, so you don't have as weird results, but it is terrible. So my point is,
it's only better in the sense that Korea can't play Korea, but it's still bad in every other sense.
So my point of all of this is that they're running fewer days. So again, I think they could reduce the number of broadcast days for play-ins and groups with this Swiss system, which would lead to more time that they allegedly don't have to do double elimination and fix some of these problems with Swiss. Now, here's the other argument, Thorin. If there are approximately, on average, around 52 games that are going to be played in Swiss, guess how many games on average it would take to do 4 GSL groups? So 4 groups of 4 double elimination. It takes 6 best of 3s to do a GSL group and get discrete 1st through 4th place. Again, in the best of 3s. Now, let's say, so that's 24 best of 3s total. So 4
times. Someone gets confused. Monty means where you even play out like a winners match in the group to see who comes first and second. You don't just do the quants where because some tournaments obviously did it. You qualify if you're the winner and then the lower bracket. That's in CSGO. You means one extra match for that reason.
Right.
Play out the group.
And you could even do what they are doing in the play-ins match at Worlds, which is have, the winner play against the
Yes.
team coming out of the losers
Second
bracket
team
from
out the other
another
one,
group.
yes.
You could
Yeah.
do that as well. Regardless, it takes
Yeah.
6 best of 3s to play a GSL group and get those discrete placements. So in that case, if we say, so there's 6 games in each of 4 groups, that's 24 best of 3s. Let's say 12 of them are 2-0s. Okay, half of them. That's 24 games. Let's say 12 of them are 2-1s. That's 36 games. So you have 60 games on average. So it does increase on average the number of games that are played. I don't think it would actually increase the number of broadcast days. I'd have to actually like lay it all out. Maybe it would by 1 or 2 days. But in this scenario, because you are lowering the randomness, everything would be best of 3s. It's still close to the same number of games, but you could run a better single elimination bracket because you would get discrete seeding. You know, the first seed of one group would play the second seed of another group, and then you would have a better single elimination bracket in theory. So my point is you can either do this Swiss system and do a double elim bracket, or you can do, ideally you do GSL groups into a double elim bracket, obviously.
Yes.
Or if you're concerned about
the league specifically would be a better
if I am
format.
solving specifically for Riot's in self-inflicted problems of having to move the tournament, I would say, well, we just saved a bunch of time in play-ins. We actually reduced the number of play-ins days, so we can increase the number of groups days by 1 or 2, and it shouldn't be an issue. So let's play 4 GSL groups, get distinct first through fourth places, so we have a better seeding system into a single elimination bracket. So if it is really, truly a time and moving the tournament issue, that is the best way to solve it, not by doing randomly seeded Swiss.
Also, by the way, another thing they've done that's just absolutely barefaced incorrect is in this actual explainer, they have a part where they say, no more group of death. That leaves fans feeling like their team's Worlds run has ended before it's even begun, right? In the sense that, like, I agree. The problem with that is, on the most purely legal sense, they're right. You don't feel before the Swiss begins like the run because you don't know who you're going to play, but you can actually have it. You can have an even worse group of death. Remember what I just explained earlier about how in the opening match, you could just have like Gen G against JDG. One of those teams is going to be 0-1. Now imagine in the 0-1 match, they play another killer team. Maybe DRX plays against JDG in that lower match, 0-1, because DRX lost against TES or something, right? That means you can get a scenario where a team doesn't make playoffs and had the hardest possible run. A run, by the way, you could never get in the groups because of the old system. Like, you could never have a group that was JDG. You couldn't have that. Like, you can actually have the worst group of death feeling from your team's experience. I've seen it happen in CSGO where a team just got, like, the worst thing that ever happens basically is this, Monty. It's not usually when the favorite gets fucked or the worst one ever is the team that's like the 6th best team in the world and they for real just play like number 1, number 2, and number 5 or something. Like, at that point in time, it's like, but the top 8 makes the playoffs and I only lost to 1, 3, and 5. It's like, unlucky. Meanwhile, when you don't go in, the team that comes in instead will be some team that just got like some bomb teams. Like they got number 9, number 12, and number, you know what I mean? Like that can happen. That's the wackest feeling in the world because it actually calls into question a single elim result even worse. It makes it look totally illegitimate sometimes.
You know, I honestly can't decide. I guess I like this format slightly better than the old one because at least there aren't a bunch of meaningless games that are being played in these best of ones.
And you can't rig any of these games. There's a good one.
Yeah.
That's good as well. Because, you know, I always thought the worst feeling ever in round robin is when I need you to beat this other guy, Dom. I need you to beat Dom so I stay alive, but you've already made it so you don't give a fuck and you just phone the game in and Dom beats you. Like, that is probably the worst competitive feeling ever in League. That won't exist in this format. So that's a plus.
And also, like, all the fans out there are like, oh my God, this is so much better. You guys have just been dying in the fucking esports desert for years. You're so fucking thirsty. And somebody just gave you a dirty sip of water and you're like, wow, this is incredible. This is the best water that ever existed, which to you at that point in time is probably true, but it's not objectively true. And I think what's so frustrating about the Worlds format is they release this MSI format, which is really good, and then they make a bunch of bullshit logic in their own post that doesn't even hold up internally or actively implies that their game sucks, which I think is a very weird rhetorical place to be. And then they take it and they somehow don't improve it very much while leading to a very flawed system. Because I will say, at least in the old groups, the seeding for the bracket was generally kind of okay. Whereas, like, I'm really scared of what the seeding of the bracket looks like coming out of this system. like really scared, which is why I say, in order to reduce some of that variance, if you want to create the excitement of, these minor region teams perhaps going up 1-0, right? Or a fluke in a best of one, which I know Riot fucking loves these like best of one upsets. Like they really get off on them. You can do that, but then just correct it later on in the format by doing double elimination. Obviously, I think you should just do GSL groups into double elim. That's the best way to run the system. But if I had to pick one thing, I would either say do Swiss into double elim or do GSL groups into single elim. Either of those is not good, but it's better. It's better.
The good news is this. The key area I actually think Riot has shot themselves in the foot, but in a way that will benefit us, Monty, is the change that they've made to MSI having 2 teams from the major regions. That's the game changer, because my prediction is this. At the end of 2023, MSI will be considered the better tournament than Worlds if you watch the 2 tournaments. Because think about it. In MSI, you are going to have a double elim playoffs featuring 2 Chinese teams, 2 LCK teams, 2 European teams. Forget even NA. There's just 6 teams playing in a double elim. Who the fuck won't watch that? That sounds amazing. Worlds is going to be this mega janky Swiss system, which will almost certainly produce some mega unfair results into what we've already seen a silly single elim bracket. Like, again, the scope of Worlds will be bigger, but the actual tournament, like the quality, I predict at the end of the year, people will say MSI was better.
Oh yeah, I mean,
because the playoffs in MSI are going to be amazing. They sound really, that sounds really exciting. Whereas before, like I said, before the joke was, you say that the semi-finals count, but even most of the semi-finals didn't matter when it was always just LPL versus LCK and LP. You know what I mean? Like it was always the fucking wrong one, wasn't it? It was never like the EU versus NA one, so it wasn't as sexy as we all build it.
Well, now we get sick EU versus NA lower bracket matches.
That's going to be awesome, isn't it?
Riot says are not high stakes. So I don't know. Sounds pretty fun to me. Like I want to watch those games. I don't even like watching NA and EU most of the time, and I want to watch those games. So I would say that's a massive success, at least in terms of hype. So I am excited definitely about MSI. Like I said, I think maybe the World's format is slightly better, but this is entirely the wrong direction to go, especially because, as you say, we just saw a CSGO major where the Swiss system fucked it up, like really fucked it up, and fucked it up permanently in the sense that we didn't get a lot of the best teams in the actual bracket stage, and it was kind of like a lackluster
I've got a point
event.
to make. There's one point I always forget to make, because if you say it this way, people get it finally, Monty. Because every time you point out a flaw in the format, an idiot will always go like this, Monty. But if you were the better team, just win. No. Here's the counter to that, and it is a complete QED counter. Shut the fuck up forever. Because here's the problem with what you're talking about. What you're implying is that the tournament is fair because whoever wins and loses faces the consequences. So are you ready? I'll do how that isn't the case. Now imagine I win my 2 first games in Swiss system, Monty, and then I go and I play against some bomb team in the 3rd game, right? You could say that's because you won the 2-0 games, right? You get an easier opponent, right? But here's the flaw. What about the other way around? What about in this scenario where a favorite loses and I have to play them, but I lost to a top team too? Like, essentially, the best way to explain it, essentially, I'll rewind it, is think about in GSL. In GSL, let's say you come second out of your group, but in the playoffs, first plays second. If you're the best team in the world and you come second, I now get punished for winning my group. I have to play you in the first round. That happens all the time in Swiss. Like, remember what I said about FaZe earlier? What sucked for FaZe was they played a killer opponent first, lost and played another tournament favorite. Like, you can say it, well, you shouldn't lose then. Well, then what about the team that had to play FaZe? Why did they have to have a hard opponent in the match they won? You know what I mean? Like, people don't get, that's the part that always gets lost, is that because there's 2 teams in a matchup, when you make an unfair matchup, you can actually fuck both teams. It's possible.
It's also people they say they love these underdog wins, but factually, I think you go back in time and what happened was, so they lost those first 2 and then they fluke lost to best of 3 to Bad News Eagles, this like nobody team, right? But then Bad News Eagles immediately loses and doesn't go to the playoff bracket of the major. So what did we get? We got one moment in time where you're like, wow, what an upset. Then you get denied FaZe actually being in the best part of the tournament.
Storyline.
And then Bad News Eagles, guess what? They're not there either. So nothing. Yep. There's just no story at that point in time. There's just absolutely nothing. And as much as people love to say, oh, I want these teams to win, that's just not true. The highest viewership is always when the most popular teams are in the finals. The highest viewership is always G2 versus Fnatic in the LEC finals. The highest would viewership have been this high at Worlds if it wasn't Deft versus Faker? Fuck no, it wouldn't have been. And even though DRX wasn't supposed to be there, you can see the fan popularity is a huge, huge, huge aspect of these matches. So
Yes.
there you go. That's why.
And by the way, if people don't know, like an example of what I was talking about even did happen at the CSGO Major. Look, it actually ended up that the underdog did win the game. Furia 3-0'd the Swiss system. Their reward was getting Na'Vi, who was the only tournament favourite in the playoffs. They got them. Now, they won the game, but again, how's that fair for you, Furia? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's like, so I did my job perfectly, yes. What's your reward? Probably on probably on paper, the team that should win the whole tournament. Brilliant. Oh, thanks. I'll do that again. Thanks. Great system. It's garbage, isn't it?
Yeah. So the randomness is there. And I know Riot loves the randomness. And you know what, Riot? I will give you the randomness of Swiss, but you have to give me double elimination bracket in return. That's the only equitable trade. We can't have both of these things because
I actually think this year will take care of that. I think they're going to do it stepping stone style. Next year's when they'll do the double in for Worlds, I think. Because they'll just see how well MSI works, mate. It'll kill it, I guarantee.
Also, Thorin, where is the mea culpa for forcing us to watch 12 years of Worlds of garbage groups where we always had games that didn't matter? And now all of a sudden it took them literally over a decade to be like, you know what? These games that don't matter in group stage and play-ins, we probably shouldn't play those. Like, why couldn't we have had this revelation 10 years ago when we knew that it was a problem? Where is the responsibility that's being taken by literally the exact same people who still work at Riot who designed these systems being like, you know what? We designed a garbage format.
But you know what, Monty? I'm not really sure Riot's big on people who still work at Riot taking responsibility for things they might have done in the past or over many years that were horrendous or just bad. So there's that already. But the other thing I would say as well is this.
It's impossible to get fired.
It's the same line I actually said on the Four Horsemen episode, which you can watch on here, that we did in the off-scene about the state of LoL. The reason this infuriates me, Monty, is the go-to. They thought this was a slam dunk. Reason why they justified every single one of the things you've just said is because they used to have more viewership than any other esport. So their logic went, what we're doing must be right. That's why we're number one. And since we're number one, we have the best format. Then what did they do when the viewership went down? Guess we better change this format. This is nonsense, guys. You're just being dragged around by your nose now. That's nothing. The difference is, if you don't know, by the way, because a lot of people maybe don't know this, when me and Monty worked on a CSGO tournament, we did this with our format. We didn't wait until we played a few seasons and go, that's a bit shit, isn't it? That's it. We sat down and said, right, if you were to try run it, what would happen? What would happen if this team won it? We looked at every possibility and we asked the question Monty's saying, what are we trying to create? What would be the ideal type of a tournament that could emerge from this? Riot not only doesn't do this, and this is a bigger point I want to make though, even worse, they're not even like a sport. They had the gall to call themselves a sport, you know, it's in that article. In a sport, by the way, I can do interviews with the people who run the sport and make these decisions and go, so why did you pick double elimination? Why don't you? Then they have to justify themselves. One, I don't think Riot even could justify themselves. You saw what a nightmare that article was. It was nonsense. It was fucking filler. And then the other thing is, I genuinely think most of the people don't even know the reasons they did that stuff all those years. I think they just did it and they just kept doing it, you know.
Whoever wrote that article should literally be fired.
Oh, it's wild, isn't it? I know.
And well, I shouldn't say that. Whoever told the person who wrote that article that information to justify it that way should be fired, because clearly they do not understand how to think through the actual ramifications of it.
For the job in question. Yeah, exactly. It's not, you're not even saying that as like a mad, crazy. I agree. Your job is to literally know and explain why you are doing. It's even called format explainer, for fuck's sake. Not format justifier. It's called format explainer. Like,
or at the end of the day, if the real reason is that, as I suspect the real reason is that you just want to move the tournament around, just say it. Why can't we just say it? Why can't we just say, yeah, it's really important to us for XYZ reasons, our partnerships, you know, and there are legit reasons, such as we signed this, you know, $100 million deals with sponsors, and they expect us to do these different activations at different events because this is what we sold. That's reasonable. That's a totally reasonable. So just say it. Why can't we just be honest? Like, well, the joke is Riot can never be honest. Is that's the answer? Is they're like pathological liars. They can't even lie, or they can't even tell the truth when the lie is irrelevant and like the truth is totally understandable.
I
Or
know
like,
why though, Monty. It's cause for real. This is one area Riot were ahead of a lot of people in esports. Riot has always sort of understood that it's like being a politician and it's a game of optics. So the real reason they don't do that, Monty, what you're saying, is because it's like being a politician. What a politician does intentionally in the modern day is you try to make vague statements which can allow everyone to read into the vague statement what they want to read and not what they don't want to read. So the problem is this, Monty. If they just came out like me and you want, and someone like John Needham just put his name on the article and was like, I am the one who decided ultimately it would be single limb. I did it because I prefer, whatever you're saying, I prefer shorter a tournament with more variance and more chance. If he just said that, me and you would be happy. But then there'd be some guy like, what the fuck then? What about this? So instead, what they need to do is make it seem just like, this is just generally the best approach. And ignore that. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. And then everyone just gets to go, well, I guess it's good. And then no one's unhappy, even though secretly everyone's still unhappy.
It's just the wildest thing about esports to me is imagine being in a competitive environment where you don't have to worry about player injury or fatigue like you do in sports. Because the thing is, in sports, your formats are limited by like what the physical body can bear, which is annoying, right? Because you can't run the thorough tests that you might want to run. And that's just a bummer. We're not in that world. We can just make up whatever we want and it's fine. Apparently not, though. Apparently not.
You know what's sad? I actually even think, just as a quick aside, and we'll wrap it in a second, I even think what's so short-sighted about this is because Riot did have that crazy head start of millions and millions of viewers and a whole infrastructure, and you've got all the teams ready, and you can do any format you want. Why not do something innovative? Like, for example, what I would do is this, Monty. Let's play like we're in Flashpoint. You sit down and you go, right, what game am I doing? League of Legends, right? League of Legends is a game, like I said before, to me, the entire appeal of the game is it's like a chess match, but with you're not just 1v1, you're 5v5, and you're trying to figure out what's he trying to do, what's he preparing for, and so to me, the entire game's like knowing your opponent, preparing for him, playing against different styles, adapting to the meta. So if I was making a format, for example, I'd maybe even go with some like chess style tournament where you play everyone in the field and at the end there's a final or something like that. To me seems more appropriate to a game like League of Legends. And again, the reason why that would be genius is because no one's done that in esports. You would actually be breaking new ground. That's what Riot think they are. So instead, all Riot's done is just take 10 years to figure out, yeah, double limb's pretty good, isn't it? Like,
dude, the funniest shit is like after 12 years they were like, yes, the CSGO major is the way. And here's the funny thing. They don't even do that for their CSGO competitor game Valorant, but they do it for League of Legends.
Valorant has the better playoff format than CSGO. That's how dumb these guys are. It's so mad, isn't it? It's so mad.
They literally fixed CSGO's format and then stole CSGO's format and then put it in League of Legends.
It's like the joke is, Monty. Here's how you actually make League amazing. What you needed was this, Monty. You needed the game just before League, so like maybe like HON, to do everything like League does now, so that in response, Riot would have had to do it differently, which would make it better, which would mean by now they'd actually be the best. Just logically, wouldn't they?
I can't handle it.
Because I agree. If you think about it, the only motivating factor in Valorant to do the right format is that CSGO's a bit janky with its own format. Like, I agree with you. I think essentially the selective pressure was CSGO, and unfortunately, they don't really consider Dota a competitor, really. It's a different type of game. So they don't change it as a result, sadly.
What a time to be alive. Well, I think that's about it for the format stuff. All right, guys. So a few announcements. Obviously, Summoning Insight will be coming back regularly. It will be on Tuesdays now, so watch out for more time announcements because of the way that the league schedule is shifting. We will also continue this year on Last Free Nation with the Monty and Wolf show, which covers LCK. The Best Damn League show with Thorin and Dom that covers LEC. There will be no LCS show for obvious reasons. And Power Spike with me and Dom and D-Gun will be continuing. SI and Power Spike will cover some LCS. And also, we've got our Last Free Nation CSGO channel. If you're a CSGO fan, tons of shows over there, including the very fun, by the way, new Hot Take Point Made with Maui and Kassad and Thorin. We'll be doing a lot more content this year, so just so you guys
You
know.
didn't see though, like I said, like literally a week ago, we did one of these, but it was a 4 horsemen, and it had Richard Lewis on. It was about League of Legends, but spoiler, you won't have seen that on Reddit for obvious reasons.
Yeah, so you guys can go back to and watch our State of League, where we talk about the LCS day changes and kind of the state of League of Legends after this year. We will have an upcoming 4 horsemen this week that will be the business state of esports. That should be very interesting because obviously there's a lot of talks of the recession and cuts, and so we'll have an expert on the teams able to chat about that. And yeah, we may do some, there's going to be a lot more short form content as well. You guys will see our plans in the coming days. Also, you'll not only want to subscribe to this Twitch channel, you'll want to subscribe to my Twitch channel at MonteCristo, because there's going to be a lot of content there this year as well. I will be streaming very, very regularly, doing a bunch of VOD reviews. So you can do a bunch of content that way. What else? Also, if you are a Grog coin holder, we will not be doing questions today. In the next day or two, there's going to be some information that we will post in our Grog coin holders on Discord for you guys about what we're doing with that. We are going to be changing the question system. Do not panic. We are going to treat you guys super well who did buy the Grog coin.
I'll get taken care of,
give you instructions. We promise we will take care of you in a great way. Thank you very much for supporting us. It has actually helped a lot. But we need to make a change based on the Rally platform. So look forward to that announcement. Just be aware about that. We will ping you and remind you within the Discord. So,
by the way, in case you live under a rock, go on this channel and also watch that mental video that Adanian made, where he just takes like Pokemon on the Game Boy, but just has like DRX doing an actual run through Worlds, and it all like thematically fit. I didn't have anything to do with this, by the way. This guy just did this all himself. Like if the references are fucking bangers. If you know Pokemon and you know League of Legends, it's unbelievable. This piece of content, it's mega.
Yeah, you need to watch it. He did silver scrapes in 8-bit.
It's mental how good it is. It's
made
so good.
all of the pixel art for all the players. It's fucking insane, guys. It is an insane effort. So definitely watch that, and shout out to Adanian as well. So a lot more awesome content coming this year for us on Last Free Nation. We will be everywhere soon. Follow us on all our social media. You can find them below on this video. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next week.